because I'll send this piece out. I'm just going to share a screen. I'm going to get your opinion on a few things. Oh, wait for the, there we go. So you should be able to see, it says generic water safety. So it says water sea safety 2021. Can you give us a few thumbs up if you can see that? Yes, all good. Brilliant. Okay.
Yes.
I'll say it's a personal view, but it's a fairly standardized, well, I'd say generic approach. I call it 10 golden nuggets. I've just compressed it into 10 different components, 10 different sections. But firstly, does safety matter? Yes, of course it does, because what we're aiming to do is take people out on the water, keep them safe, show them a good time, progress them, keep them enthusiastic, and they go home and they want to come back for more. We don't want to get into our boat and be so scared and concerned about what we're doing. So clearly, we've already talked about whose responsibility safety is. It's principally the boat captain, but everybody has a responsibility for safety. So if I'm steering a boat and Mickey or Ruvik or anybody, Leora is in the front of the boat and they see something I don't, then they tell me and everybody can shout, stop the boat, and we've covered that. Question: do you need a club safety officer to take responsibility for ensuring maintaining safety standards? What do we think about that? Do you need a person whose specific responsibility is safety?
Are you asking officially or practically?
Yeah. I'm asking anybody in the house who thinks he's got an opinion about that.
It's a very complicated question, you know. I think it's every club maybe need to have it, but actually it's a responsibility of the captain and you know, the coach, the captain of the boat.
Okay.
Tim,
I have a different idea.
Okay.
Tim, I think it's a good idea because it's always better to have 2 eyes, 2 ears, and another opinion of when you are getting to the water.
Okay.
Reuven is close to the perfect answer. I think what it means that one person can receive all the knowledge or all the cases that had some safety issue, and to hold and to advertise and to explain and to work a better safety all the time, to make this organization better and better by learning, and each group can have some basic or problem of safety, but not all of them know about each of them. So if there is one person who can reach all the knowledge of all the groups in this club and learn from it and advertise it and teach it, that everybody will understand what happened and make it better and better all the time, this is a very good idea.
Okay. Leora, what do you think? Where's Leora?
I think that maybe if someone else will be with the captain and see how is the weather, how is the sea, if all the basic safety is in the boat, it's better to the training.
Yeah.
It will be better.
Yeah. Limor, do you agree?
What?
Does Limor agree?
Yeah, I think it should be a supervisor that in charge on top, check and make sure that the equipment is good and that everyone taking safety, controlling everything and organizing it. Yes.
It's one. Thank you. It's one of those things that everybody is responsible for. So it's Davide is running a session. He's running the session. Great. But somebody separate to that is also making sure that every now and again the boat is checked. Every now and again the pontoons are safe. Every now and again, different things, any new changes, any incidents that's happened anywhere in Israel that reflect what you do. So somebody with specific responsibility, and actually it's an international standard that you should have a safety officer, and that one person has greater knowledge of safe paddling policies, water safety policies, and is the person you go to make sure any plans that you've got are compliant with that. So it's one knowledgeable person. And if you think about it, over the last year, with the COVID situation, lots of clubs had a safety officer and a COVID officer as well. And it's the same sort of thing where an unusual circumstance, unfamiliar circumstance that requires some extra levels of safety, that sort of situation as well. Okay, so that sort of situation. And this has come about, say for example, you were planning, and this example here, just a long trip, a coastal trip in a dragon boat for regular paddlers, or it could be along the Sea of Galilee or whatever it's going to be. Then all the information that you need, it's part of your normal training, but also you need to be able to refer to any policies and documents you might have. Now this comes about, there are actually, you've got a water safety policy. So I've written one for Cyprus, and one of the policy documents I've written for you is, or I'm going to suggest we're going to introduce with the level 3s, is get a water safety policy, not just is good for the IDBF, but works for you at your specific paddling locations as well. And that's what I've sent out to you, just to be aware it exists. And this one I've written here is for the Raging Mouflons in Cyprus. But what I want to end up doing is doing a similar sort of thing for you as well, because the circumstances that apply to Raging Mouflons or any other club elsewhere on the planet will fit your situation mainly, but not entirely. But the whole point about this is it's great having big, long policies and documents, but if nobody ever reads them, then they're useless. So what we say is we nominate one person who's interested in this sort of stuff, who knows where to find the information and is knowledgeable, maybe not an expert, but certainly knows where to find relevant information in relation to any aspect of paddling. And this goes to Ruvik's point that risk assessment is not just weather conditions. So if you have a look at these documents, I've put in as many possible contingencies and risks that I can think of, and there will be more. So the whole idea about any policies and documents is if you've got them written, then you review them every now and again, every few years, make sure they're still relevant and change them to make sure they remain relevant. So what's relevant now may not be relevant in 2 years' time. And a good example is COVID. 2 years' time, 2 years ago, nobody heard of COVID. Now it's part of our risk assessment. So things will change.
Tim, is dragon boating regulated in any way?
Say that again, sorry?
Is dragon boating regulated? Are there
Yes.
laws?
Yes, here they are. But they're not in Israel at the moment.
So these are legal compliance issues for a boating club.
Well, it depends. If your governing body really should take the responsibility to create these documents, because the bottom line is, as a helm, as a coach, you're responsible for you and 21 other people in a dragon boat. And if it's a big event, you could have at a race event or a big gathering, you could have 100, 200 people on the water. So it's all very well training you as a helm, as a coach, but what standards are we holding you to? So backing you up as a coach, backing you up as a boat captain, you should have these policies and documents that tell you how to do what you're doing, so we know how to train you, what standard you're achieving and maintaining. And when it comes to water safety, what is the basic minimum? And if you're not sure about something, or it's a borderline situation, there's a document there that you can refer to that will either give you the solution or give you the steps to take to find the solution. So it may not be, I mean, governing bodies self-regulate. So it wouldn't be, it may actually be in law as well in Israel. I'm not familiar with Israeli law, certainly, but I'm certain that if you're running a club, there'll be a law that deals with you taking responsibility for the safety of people. There must be.
Okay, so it's more policies, procedures, and self-governance than some external governing body.
Well, yes, but yeah, exactly, because at the moment the governing body for dragon boating in Cyprus, in Israel, will be the Israel Federation. But I happen to know that at the moment you don't have these documents in place.
Okay, thank you.
So we're working towards that. It comes about just very quickly.
Tim, it's alright. Sorry for not seeing me. I have my reasons, but I have to clear something. In Israel, there is a person which is sitting in Haifa, is in charge of all the legal regulations concerning all types of boats, as well as the dragon boats. So we have our regulations, very strict ones.
Yeah.
They concern how to sail in the water during, not in the night, and what should be on the boat, and so, and a lot of safety procedures. So we are not living without any safety procedures. You must know it. Sorry for interrupting.
No, absolutely, and that's exactly my point. So you may be operating. You may actually, I don't think so, because I've seen the way you operate, but I mean, certainly it's happened in Cyprus where they were operating in breach of not only the IDBF regulations, but the law. And they were, frankly, blissfully ignorant that they were in contravention of the law. That's why we went through this process last year to bring them back into line. So it's aligned to the existing standards. I think you're a little bit more organized than they were a few years ago. But there will be these standards, and anything we write will need to comply exactly and align with what are the existing laws. Exactly that. So thank you, Orit. That's exactly what I was talking about. The reason it's important is because this one here, I mean, you may not have heard of Lyme Bay in 1993. It's a British case where basically a group took out some young kayakers in Lyme Bay, a big bay in the south of England, and they complied with all the existing policies and directions, and yet they managed to kill a number of them. They did everything they were required to do, but at that point in time, the regulations weren't sufficiently stringent. So the point is, things change over time. Now in the UK, everything is sewn up quite tight, and that's why I mentioned that, because that gave rise to the British safety policy, which gave rise to the IDBF policy. So I'm not saying that's the last word, but that's a good step in the right direction, and that's the document that we've built the water safety policy onto. But we need to, obviously, as Orit says, can make sure it complies with local policy in Israel as well. Okay. So very quickly, we've sort of touched upon this, but if you are a level 1 coach, and this goes to Ruvik's point as well. Once you're qualified as a level 1 coach, I say in IDBF, but it'll be the same as the Israeli level. All you're actually entitled to do is basically introduce people to the sport. It says teach young or other people the basic techniques, introduce new skills, and that's exactly what you can or can't do as a level 1 foundation coach. And you should always be under the supervision of a level 2. So a level 1, an assistant coach, a foundation coach can take people out on the water, but they must be operating under a competent current level 2. And the level 2 must be either present there, or they don't have to be on the water, but they need to be in a position to direct and control the operation of the boat. That could be in a safety boat alongside, it could be by two-way radio, it depends on the circumstances, but they can't be at home having lunch with their partner. Okay, so the person who's actually running the session is a level 2, but the person who's actually running the boat can be a level 1 coach. When you move up to level 2 participation coach, then once again, these are the things they can do: skills development, it's established coach, there's a general coaching award for the sport, and they can run training sessions and be, like I say, be the person in charge of various outdoor activity centres and training. That will change depending on where you are. But that just emphasises that once you're level 1 coach, you can't go and coach the world. There's a hierarchy, there's a structure to it. And the idea is you become a level 1 coach, gain some experience, and then move on to level 2. Okay, that's generally what would happen. So that's what I consider to be 10 golden nuggets. And I'm going to give you a brief introduction today, and then we're going to return to this when I come to Israel and in future.
Steve, I have a question.
Yes, go.
What do you think need to be time or experience between moving from level 1 to 2?
It depends. And the reason it depends is because the way it was written, and this is like in the 80s and 90s, it was people new to the sport. So if somebody's totally new to the sport, then it might take a number of months, it might take a number of years. However, if you get somebody like yourself who's been a coach for a long time, albeit in another discipline, and then come to dragon boating, you would have the understanding of coaching, the principles of coaching, and what we're actually doing with an existing coach is converting them to water sports or converting them to dragon boat. So it's very much a case-by-case basis. And just for the benefit of everybody else, what I did when we first started the level 3 process that we're going to get moving in a few weeks is have a discussion with each of the coaches to find out what sort of experience they've got, because everyone's experience is going to be different. You see what I mean? So it depends, and it really depends. In the same way it depends, what I hope with the Helms, for example, is we'll do the course and everyone will pass. But some people will pass straight away if they've done some previous experience. Other people may need some more time. So there's not really an average. It depends on the student, it depends on the individual, and it depends on how serious they are about the subject, frankly. So it's a difficult one to say it will take 2 weeks, it will take 2 years. It depends. So it doesn't really answer the question, but it depends on the student, depends on the person. Anyway, 10 golden nuggets. There's more than 10, but these are 10 basic ones. But before we start, what do you know about the person in the boat? So you need to make sure that the person is fit, healthy, and we mentioned last week, and I sent it out, the manifest. And this is basically the list, the record of who goes out in any given boat, any particular session. I can't remember what you said. Do you have when I say a manifest, I mean a session list. So do you keep a record of who goes out when you take a boat out every session?
What is the question?
The question is when you take out, so the next time do you keep a record of who is present?
Yes.
Right. What do you call? I call it a manifest. What do you call it?
We have a Google Excel, Google Docs,
right.
Google Sheets.
So you've got a Google sheet, and does that include? It will include the names, so that the 20 people, the 30 people who went out. But does that also include the fact they've got a safety brief, the fact that they're wearing buoyancy aids, or the fact you've checked the weather? Does it have that mini risk assessment as well?
No.
Okay. I mean, that's my suggestion, that you, apart from having you also have a record. You don't have to write what the weather conditions are, but the fact that you've checked the weather and the weather is good. You see what I mean?
Like a checklist.
Yeah, absolutely. The fact that you've checked everyone is fit to paddle, the fact that you've checked everyone's wearing a buoyancy aid, you've done a warm up, you've done a cool down. And the reason I do it like that, and I'll send you the list out again, is I just tick it off, and it reminds me, because very often, if you're coaching, sometimes you'll forget to do the cool down, you'll forget to do the brief, you'll forget to number off, you'll forget to give them a safety brief. And it's just a ready check that you fill it in, everyone's there, everyone's present, who's the boat captain, who's the coach, and that tick, 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 fine, we're good to go. Yeah.
Tim, in Israel, if you forget, the ladies will tell you, you forgot, let's do it.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what you want. Exactly what you want. So that reminder, because now why do they do that?
Because it's important.
Why is it important?
Safety.
Absolutely. And this is the point. This is absolutely the point, because even in countries like the US, where they're very litigious, so they're very concerned about safety, they don't teach it. And I've taught people in the US, and the paddlers are interested in safety. They're interested in us as the coach, taking their safety seriously. And that's really, really important. And that's why, as Mickey quite rightly says, if you forget to do the safety brief, if you forget to number off, they'll remind you, because they're quietly telling you, Mickey, you've forgotten, and it's important to us. So it's really good. And I'd always encourage people to do that, because we all forget, don't we? When you think about it, you're coaching a session, there's lots of things to think about, and you forget things. So
Yeah.
anybody who can help me out and can remind me if I forget, fantastic. And that keeps everybody safe, everyone happy. So there we go. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Mickey. Great example, because I'll do the same thing. You forget and people remind you, and it's good. Okay. What's this? Cold water shock. Now, we mentioned this before, and I'll do a demonstration when I come to Israel. Do you think, well, in Israel, the water's never that cold?
It's cold in the winter.
Okay. How cold in the winter?
Quite cold.
10 degree, maybe 12.
Never
Right.
below 15.5 degrees.
Okay, now let me tell you this, and this is important. If somebody came up behind me and shocked me, what would I do?
Stop my breathing.
I'd go, wouldn't I?
Yeah, stop
I'd
my
take a
breathing.
sharp intake of breath, and this is really important. So when you hear about cold water shock, forget the word cold. People say cold water shock below 15 degrees. It's all relative. It's any water. If you suddenly end up in the water and you weren't expecting to be there because the boat's capsized, you will have a shock reaction. If the water's cold, that reaction will be more exaggerated. Yeah. But it's a human body design fault that when you're shocked, you take in air. If you're in the water, unfortunately, you can take in water as well. And that gives rise in most people to a panic reaction. So it doesn't matter if you're a great swimmer, you will still experience or suffer this panic reaction. And when you're panicking, your limbs are closing down because your body is saying you're under threat. So get all the blood to the core of the body, keep us alive. Yeah. And if you can't breathe at the time, you're not thinking. And that is why we say to you, stay with your buddy, stay with the boat, float, acclimatise to the water, take a few seconds, listen for the next command. Any questions? I don't want to make this more serious than it sounds, but unfortunately, the human being's survival mode, that sharp intake of breath to get oxygen in the system to recharge everything, could actually drown somebody. And people can drown in a narrow or shallow area of water. So I'm not saying just be aware of it. So when you're given the safety brief, just tell people, if you end up in the water, the first thing you do is actually relax, despite the circumstance. Relax, think, and then when we do the numbering system, it's all controlled, it's all ordered. Okay, so that's cold water shock. Think water shock, and then you won't go far wrong. But if you're in the mind of saying, well, it never gets below 15 degrees, we don't have to worry about it, forget that. Just think about water shock and a shock reaction in an unfamiliar circumstance. Mayo, do you agree?
Yes, of course.
Brilliant. I thought I'd just check just in case. Okay. And in fact, the Royal National Lifeboat Institution, the lifeboats in the UK, last few years, they now have this. They say float for your life. And they're trying to get people to do exactly that. If you end up in the water, just float. Try and relax for a few seconds, 10 seconds, so you start thinking about what you're doing. Yes, I'm in the water. Yes, I can float. In your case, I'm wearing a buoyancy aid. I'm near the boat and help is at hand. But it's that initial panic reaction that disorientates people. And the bottom line here, you can probably see it, it says respect the water. And that's not a bad way to go along, however familiar you are with water and paddling. So number one.
That's exactly, Tim, that's exactly what we are doing now with the Lionesses. Because I'm training them now how to use the life jacket, how to do things in the water that when we need it, they knew how to react.
Absolutely. And I've been doing this for years now. And if in many places, for example, if we said to the crew, we're going to be doing a water safety next Sunday, next weekend, and we can do a capsize, I guarantee a number of people wouldn't turn up. So what I do now is when I teach water safety, all aspects of water safety, I teach it as a game. And we make it an enjoyable session so people want to come along. And we'll demonstrate that when we come to Israel. So people learn bit by bit, and it's a game and it's enjoyable, and they learn as they go and they enjoy the process. Okay, so Nugget number 2, buoyancy aids. Now I know you wear buoyancy aids, and it's a great respect to you that you do, because lots of places don't. And they think, well, I'm a competent swimmer, I don't need to wear a buoyancy aid. But there's some things to bear in mind about buoyancy aids. I pretty much guarantee the buoyancy aids you wear are this is the standard, and they're 50 newtons, which actually gives you 5 kilos of buoyancy. I'll explain this when I come, why 5 kilos is sufficient. But it's worth bearing in mind, your buoyancy aids are not life jackets. A life jacket is something completely different. Well, it's different, it's more buoyancy, and a life jacket is designed to put you in the water head up. That's what a life jacket does. And we use the term interchangeably. A buoyancy aid keeps you buoyant. It's intended for people who can swim, and it just assists them to stay buoyant, assists them to swim. It's for near shore rescue, which is a few hundred meters really. It's of limited use in disturbed water, so you wouldn't be going out in disturbed or rough water anyway. And it gives you sufficient buoyancy, but you can actually float head down, which is not great for survival. So when I come, we'll be doing a water safety package, and we'll be refreshing your skills, or maybe teaching you, if you've not done it before, how you recover people conscious, unconscious, injured from the water. And I'm pretty sure you'd have done some of this, but it's part of the package to make sure everyone's talking the same language when it comes to buoyancy. But buoyancy aids won't save your life. They'll just assist you to swim if you can swim already. Okay, so that's worth bearing in mind. But this is more of a life jacket. You can actually get 150 newton. You can actually get 275 newton buoyancy aids, and you're almost floating out the water. This is like sea survival. Yeah, for deep sea survival. But once again, the 100 newton type 2, if you use the American system, and this is for people, they'll keep them upright in the water. It should self-right within 10 seconds. This is a definition of a life jacket. Okay, it's more bulky to wear, and in fact, in the vast majority of instances, you wouldn't paddle a dragon boat with a life jacket because it's just too big. And it's too big because it's designed to be bulky to keep you buoyant in rougher water. Okay, so there's a difference there. So the bottom line is, whatever buoyancy aids you decide to use, then if you're buying buoyancy aids or selecting buoyancy aids, make sure they are fit for the purpose you want them to be fit for. And if you're using the type 3, the 50 newton buoyancy aids, then you need not only just to teach people to wear a buoyancy aid, but how to stay safe in the water whilst wearing the buoyancy aid. It's not sufficient just to wear it. Okay, so I just introduced that, but we'll cover that in greater detail. So nugget number 3, when I say dynamic risk assessments, this is the sort of risk assessment that the boat captain should do before you go out on the water every session. I call it W4, wind, water, waves, and weather generally. So to make sure, and like local knowledge, and you've told me already that if you get an east wind, I think in the Kinneret, then you can still paddle in certain, or a west wind, you can still paddle. So you'll have the weather forecast, and you'll also get local knowledge about, even if you've got an east wind or a west wind, there's certain areas you can still paddle. So it's all of these factors together. It's not a big, long risk assessment about how to paddle, slips, trips and falls. It's general, the sort of thing I've asked you to do, quick check to make sure everything is safe on a given day, and to make sure that the weather forecast that is forecast is still relevant at the location you're paddling, because there are some changes. Now you have to tell me, but this is what we use in Cyprus. We use Windfinder, and there's lots of different wind sports, let's see, windsurfing sites, kite surfing sites, air sports. So where do you get your relevant forecast in Israel from? So where do you normally get it?
Predict wind.
Okay, so that'd be the same sort of thing as Windfinder. It'll give you a localized wind. Okay, where else do you go?
There's a Wind Guru.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wind Guru is it have cameras and have all kind of weather forecast a few days ahead.
Okay, so thank you, Asaf. Good morning, good evening, rather. Wind Guru, Wind Finder. There's another one called Wind Jenny. Lots of these are international sites, and you'll find one. Wind is obviously very important to us, but if you operate on the sea or a large area of water like Kinneret, it's not the sea, but there's other factors going on. And for example, this is an example of, excuse me. So Latchi, you may know, is on the north coast of Cyprus. Now that's fairly rough sea. That's about a 1.5 to 2.2 meter swell from the northeast. Yeah. Now, this is just a given day. And this is why local knowledge is really important. Wind Finder, like Wind Guru, on that particular day, said there'd be a southeast wind 8 kph. Now, the reason it's different is because Wind Finder, Wind Jenny, Wind Guru give you the local wind. If you're talking about the sea swell, that's generated maybe 1,000 kilometers away. Okay, so sometimes the local conditions do not match up with the local weather forecast. So in Cyprus, and I can talk about Cyprus, I use something called the local government, or it's a government national, it's called MOA. It basically tells you what's going on with the big picture swell conditions. So what I do in Cyprus is I look at the big picture wind and swell, the shipping forecast that we use in the UK, and I use the local wind finder, and together it tells me big picture what's going on. Okay. You'll probably have similar sort of thing, and this is an example: wind finder versus MOA. They're both accurate, they're both correct, but on that given day you've got the MOA saying the swell is coming in from the southwest, and wind finder at a given time of day saying there's an east-southwest wind. It's just knowing that where the swell's coming from and where the wind's coming from may be different, because if they're meeting, that's going to cause different conditions. That's all. Doesn't have to be very complex, but by using a variety of different methods, if you use 2 wind sites, it will give you the same information. But if you're working on the sea, for example, or probably on Kinneret as well, there'll be a website that will give you information about the big picture sea conditions or water conditions, and the wind conditions may change through the course of the day. Whereas the swell, once it's set up, that will probably be going for a few days. And in Paphos, because it's not tidal, but there's still a big movement of water in the Eastern Mediterranean and on the coast in Cyprus, in Israel as well, that will be generated, and that will be generally southwest always. So there's either big, and then the local wind will act upon that. So it's worth thinking about. Think about 2 different methods of getting your weather forecast, and they can confirm, and sometimes they conflict. And so when you know when they conflict, how they conflict, and what this means on the ground at your given location. Okay, so worth looking at 2. So I know you don't work on, well, you might do. At the moment, you don't necessarily work on the sea, as in ocean, but you could do. But once again, you work on the Sea of Galilee, and that's a big area of water. So this is a suggestion of safety kit that you'd need, safety equipment. You may or may not need all of these, but for example, do you take out a mobile phone or a VHF radio?
Yes, of course, mobile phone and whistle.
Okay, so why would you use a mobile phone as opposed to a VHF radio?
Tim.
Yes.
Good evening. Look, in the Sea of Galilee, the law, you have to have a motorboat with the dragon boat all the time. Not every dragon boat, but every time they're underwater.
Okay.
You have like one motorboat with 3, 4, 5 dragons out.
Right.
Okay, so all the equipment, all the safety equipment usually is on the motorboat.
Okay, so you've got one on the Sea of Galilee. You've got one safety motorboat that's responsible for the fleet of dragon boats. Okay, thank you. How's it work on the Yarkon?
On the Yarkon, we take a mobile phone. We don't need to go with the motorboat when you go out with the dragon boat.
Okay.
I'm taking with me mobile phone. I'm taking with me spare pedals, whistle, And that's it. This is what we need because it's the river in the Yarkon is it's not so wide, you know, it's very narrow.
Right. Okay.
So there is a lot of people on the park in the both of the sides all over the day, and a lot of people all around all the time.
Okay. Just a question. What's the benefits of a radio, VHF radio, over a mobile phone, or would you use both?
I think mobile is better, no?
Depends on the coverage. I would go with both. The good thing about mobile, you'd have to, if you're going to use the mobile, you have to know who you're ringing.
Of course.
Of course. So
Let's
so
say
you
that
know.
let's say that in the Yarkon, if something happens and I'm in the middle of the river and I need to call someone, I'm calling someone from the club that I know that he's in the club and they have a license for motorboat and they can take the motorboat and come in a few minutes.
Okay. The benefit of a VHF radio, especially if you're on channel 16, is you're talking to emergency services and anybody else in the area who may be able to afford or render you assistance. So it depends on where you're operating. Certainly if you're operating on the sea, I would take both.
Yes, of course.
Mobile phones, the batteries might be good, they might be bad, may not be waterproof, all sorts
Yes,
of
course.
and also
In
downside-
the Sea of Galilee. But in the Yarkon, I don't think that you need more than a mobile phone, you know.
Okay. And you'd have the climate or situation where people know where you are anyway.
Yes,
Right,
yes.
so you've got coverage. And
Yes.
obviously, most people should know, I understand in Israel, in fact, Asaf told me that rather than ringing the Coast Guard or whatever, you ring 100 and they decide what assets you need, yeah?
That's in the Sea of Galilee.
Yeah, okay. And obviously, if you've got if you're calling particular people on the mobile, then you need to make sure their number is programmed into the phone, obviously. Okay.
Yeah.
But the other things, I think it's a great idea for a helm to carry a whistle anyway, because as you all know, in windy conditions, it's quite hard actually sometimes communicating with the front of the boat, let alone anybody else. And if you're trying to shout into wind to another boat,
They don't hear you.
you don't hear you. If a whistle will carry across a huge distance. So even if you're trying to attract attention, I always carry now a whistle around my neck anyway. There's an international series of signals in terms of what 3 whistle blasts. You don't need to know that. I can send you it. But if you hear somebody blowing a whistle, at the very least, you'll look around and establish some sort of communication with them. So that's great. We mentioned if you're working on a large area of water, you could carry a tow line. And if you carried a tow line, it's not just for you, but you might be in a position to render assistance to somebody else. And like I say, just going back to buoyancy aids, one of the reasons you'd wear a buoyancy aid is not just to save you, but to help you to save somebody else as well. Okay, so that's worth thinking about. Spare paddles, you mentioned that, spare equipment, because you can be out in the middle of the lake, the middle of the river, middle of a session, and break a paddle. That's obvious. But how about maybe not flares on the river? Certainly if you went to sea, you'd need some flares, but it's probably legal as well. What about a first aid kit? Would you carry a first aid kit?
No, we don't carry, but I think we should start to carry it on every boat.
Yeah.
We don't carry it yet.
You don't need a very comprehensive. It's just, you don't need like
something small.
Something small, some plasters, antiseptic wipes.
Yes,
gloves.
like you put in your car or something in your bathroom, you know.
Yeah, something small. I've got something small that goes into a small box, waterproof box, and it goes in. And I take it out every time, because if you leave it in the boat, it'll sort of decay.
In the Sea of Galilee, you got it all the time because we got it in the motorboat that escort us.
Okay, but if you've got that, fine. But great, if that's part of your Sea of Galilee safety equipment, absolutely fine. Okay, and we're talking about ropes and bailers and things to look after the boat. They should be equipped anyway, so all good with that. Okay. Now, this is quite interesting. Any of you who are members of a gym, you may have completed one of these. It's a Canadian idea. It's called a PARQ, Physical Activity Readiness Questionnaire. Now, Orit may do this, or you may do this for the team anyway, but this is just a an initial health screening questionnaire. Now, not so much for irregular paddlers, but certainly if you had a special event with some unfamiliar people, you may choose, and I can send this out as part of the package, when you have first-time paddlers, either fresh cats paddlers or anybody, you may already do something like this, just to do initial health screening to make sure people know that there is a certain amount of physical activity, exertion involved. And if
We
they have,
do it. We have team. We have a checklist, a very strict checklist, and we do it.
oh right, okay. In that case, so could you or Ilana send that to me? It'd be quite interesting to read that, to be honest with you. So if you do that anyway, then I don't need to spend too much time on it. But you are one
I'll
of
send
the.
I'll send it in Hebrew. This is your homework. Translate it. Okay, I will.
No problem. That's called. That's easy. That's called Google Translate. I can do that. No worries.
I will. No problem.
Right, well, that's great. I'm really, really great to hear that, because you'll be sad to hear that most dragon boat clubs don't even know what I'm talking about. So the fact that you're ahead of the game is brilliant.
Tim, for me, it's one of the most important things.
It is.
When I start with a new group of paddlers.
Yeah.
For me, it's the most terrifying thing that I don't know the crew, I don't know the people. And for the first time, teaching them how to get to the boat, how to start running the boat. It's the most difficult lesson for me.
Yes.
And also, I'm very terrified. How are they? What's the condition of the paddlers? If they are in a good condition, if they are sick or not. You know, I don't know them before. And you need to do it step by step and take care of the group, or take care of yourself.
Yeah. And it's the other thing is, you're also, by using a system like this, you're also building trust and confidence in the crew. And we said that was very important. And also you're showing people and demonstrating to people that you take their health, welfare and safety seriously. Now, you're not a doctor, so you're not going to be assessing, well, you might be, you're not going to be assessing, but you're just asking, in this case, this form, a few questions, probably more questions with you. And so people, if they tick yes on any of those, then they go back to get some advice. They don't tell you their medical history, but it's just an extra check to make sure everything's okay, and it should be, and they're not coming into dragon boating too soon if they're post-therapy or post-treatment or whatever. But it sounds to me that you've probably got something a little bit more comprehensive than this. So all good.
I have a question, which I think now, from a legally point of view, is it legal to ask people, you know, when you interview them, tell me your health condition?
No. And what this form does, I haven't seen your forms. This just asks some questions. It just, for example, has your doctor ever said, did you have a heart condition, and that you should only do physical activity recommended by a doctor? Now, if they answer yes, and they keep the questionnaire. So in this case, you give them the questionnaire and you say, if you answer yes to any of these 7 questions, then what you need to do is go and see your doctor and make sure your doctor says yes, okay, to carry on this activity. You only get back forms that say 7 no's. You see what I mean? So all it is so people with the PARQ, people take responsibility. You take responsibility for their health, welfare and safety, and so do they. So it's a partnership thing. And I haven't seen your form yet, but I'm pretty sure your form will be similar. But you don't keep a record of people's medical conditions. All you keep a record of is forms that say no, 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 good to go. If they say yes, they go and get checked out, make sure okay, come back.
So I've got a question, please.
Yes.
About the assignment you gave us.
Yes, which one?
I thought about this document, and I was questioning myself if I should make this or send this to the organizers before the group is coming, or if I do it when they come to me at the briefing at the beginning and give them this, because I don't know them, and it's a mixed group with all kind of ages and conditions different, not sports. people do not competition. I lost my English.
Okay.
Anyhow,
I got it. I got it. Let me
so I ask myself, okay, so if I give it in the when they come to it, what do I do with it? If someone said, what do I do with it? Okay, you understand me.
Excellent question. And how I use this form is, if I'm running a session, say I'm going to Cyprus fairly soon, say people want me to run a session for them. So we do a few emails back and forwards to plan. I would send this to them at the planning stage, and I'll send this form out to you anyway, because it'll be very interesting anyway. And it explains what happens if you answer yes. So if they answer yes to any of these, they get checked out before they come.
Okay.
So that's so it's a pre-planning phase. So you should only have people coming to your session who tick no, or who've answered yes and gone to get some advice and then come back to you. So it's really something you send. If I've got a session in 2 weeks' time, I send it out now. That's what I do with this.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
If somebody comes to me to do some paddle boarding in Cyprus, and I've had this a few times, and I've refused a few people because they've just walked off, literally off the street. I want to do a paddleboard session. I get them to fill in this 7 questions. If they answer yes, I say, you're very welcome to come, but go and get yourself checked out and then come back and you're more than welcome. So what I'm doing is I'm protecting me, but I'm also protecting them.
Yeah.
Because somebody may have not done any physical activity for 20 years. And I had this. He said to me, I said, when did you last do physical activity? He said, in the army. I said, when you were in the army? He said, 30 years ago. I said, well, you know, that's fine. You're more than welcome, but get yourself checked out and then come and see me. And it turned out he wrote to me and he had a heart condition. So it happens.
Team, I
Yeah,
have a
but if
question.
we get them, sorry, but if they come only for 2.5 hours, the team, as you put it to us, so I asked myself, maybe it's just good fun. I give them a little play with the numbers and play with the commands, to learn the commands and play with it a little bit, and
Okay. Let me ask you a question. And this is a worst case scenario. Worst case scenario. So you get a load of older adults, okay, my sort of age, 60 plus, in the boat, haven't done any activity, and you take them out for a fun session, and somebody has a heart attack in the boat in the middle of the lake. How do you deal with that?
You jump in the water.
Okay. What I'm saying is, I'm not saying you don't overreact, but if you've got a group of, say, young people, less likely. Older adults, you might want to be a bit more stringent about your check. So you've got to think about who you're training.
Yeah.
If you've got a bunch of kids, bunch of young adults turn up for a fun session, you probably need to spend less time on this. If you've got a load of older people, my sort of age, then maybe spend a bit more time on it. It depends. You see what I mean? So it's
Yeah, I understand it completely. I feel the same, but it's Israel, and you know, you don't want to make too many problems, and sometimes I think, but I thought also, as you said before.
May I add? I really accept what you're telling me, but as I know the facts here with my group, I know that we are very strict with the physical side of the paddlers, but there is another side which is concerning, which is worries me, and it's the side of the psychological side of the paddlers. Okay. Yeah. There was a case which the paddler was in not very mentally condition.
Yeah.
And she was really she was a threat to the paddlers, to the other paddlers. Yeah. Recently there is a paddler, one of my paddlers, which is a hysteric, panic, and so and so and so, and I think it can cause a great damage. Absolutely. So I cannot, when I ask them about their physical situation, okay, it's okay, it's reasonable. But how can I, what am I doing with this side of the mental and the psychological issue?
Well, there's only one. I mean, I will take anybody in a dragon boat except people who are violent or potentially violent. And the only way you can do that, unless somebody's going to tell you their medical history, is make an assessment. And in many years of doing, I've only ever stopped a session and put somebody out of a boat because they were potentially violent. So it's very few and far between. But really, you've got to, if you can't get access to medical advice or medical assessment, then you have to make an informed choice.
But Tim, your last question kind of covers any other event, be it physical, emotional, whatever. Is there any reason why you can't do physical exercise at this point?
What? Say that again. I'm following you, but
I was kind of answering Orid's question, saying the last question on your questionnaire here covers that eventuality of someone who's not in mental capacity to do physical sport. You know, you can't do anything if they say no, there's no other reason. But if they think about it, and if you tell them to think about all other potential reasons why they cannot paddle today, then they would need to answer yes there.
I mean, if somebody comes to you and they're referred from, so I'm not talking about BCS paddlers here. This is a general thing. I run various events for charity organisations, and I always check whether there's any potential compromises with the event organiser. Of course, we run events for so-called problem kids, ADHD, all sorts of so-called conditions, some of which are problematic, some are not. And very often when you've got somebody who's got some mental or apparent mental issues, by putting in an unusual circumstance and putting out their comfort zone, sometimes it does some good. So if you've got a specialist or an event organizer, then you can refer to, that's great. But I think the problem Orit is talking about is somebody who comes to the club, comes to the team, and you have no idea about their capacity or their state in terms of potential for maybe extreme case violence or mood swings. The only thing you can do really is assess them during your briefing and see how they react at the early stages, and then if there's any alarm bells that are rung, then you've got to sort of take them out and have that conversation with them. But there's not, I don't think there's any legal way that you could ask somebody ethically, have you ever suffered from any psychological illness? I mean, you could ask that, but I think it'll be a little bit problematic. It might actually be legally problematic if you ask that specific question. And what happens if they said no, and they did? So I think you'd have
okay, but Tim, listen, we're talking about safety here. For me, this issue is in the first grade, before everything, okay? And if this girl is in a panic, she can cause a damage to another 19 girls. But so should I, as a club manager, suspend her?
No, well, I may not suspend her, but basically the bottom line is you're always reacting to something that's happened. So the first thing we're dealing with was whether you could, how you'd screen somebody. And it's probably all, unless they refer you, they're referred via a carer or a support worker, you're not going to know about their mental capacity. However, what I was getting on to talk about is if anybody displays any activity, I mean, most people are apprehensive about a dragon boat because it's a boat and it rocks a little bit. I'm not, that's routine concern, apprehension, and part of a good coach is to put people's minds at rest. That's part of what we do. But if it's somebody who is very panicky and you assess that their behavior is likely to either cause panic in others or their reaction is likely to be so extreme or sufficiently extreme to put the rest of the crew in danger, then you need to investigate the matter, maybe not suspend them. I mean, that might be an option, but I'd certainly take them aside, have a discussion with them, and then work out what the situation is. So absolutely. I mean, whether you decide to suspend them, that's fairly extreme. If they've done something violent, then yes, suspend them. But what I would say is, if somebody behaves in a way that is unpredictable, unusual, likely to cause problems, then you cannot overlook it, because as we all say, safety is paramount. But you may not know that until they do something. So the problem is, the challenge rather than the problem is making sure your response is proportionate to what the issue is. So if they have a mild panic attack, then we can slow them down. We can examine what the reason for the panic is, okay, and assess them and make sure they're sat next to somebody who can look after them and help them. If their reaction is way off the scale or causing problems, then you cannot have them in the boat until you worked out what the situation is.
So in this situation, let's say during paddling, after a quarter of paddling, the helm or the guide or the responsible person there should stop the boat and take care of it. This is his duty. Okay.
Absolutely. And
but what shall he do if he's in the middle of the sea and he can't stop the training?
Well, the benefit is, I mean, if you're in Kinneret, then you've got a safety boat. Okay, and a person who's unpredictable is far safer, but I'd put them in the safety boat with somebody to look after them as well. But I'll tell you that the situation that I had, and it was a couple of years ago, and this is the first time in maybe 100 sessions, so it's very unusual. I had a young girl. It wasn't a problem group, but she decided from the outset that she wanted to capsize the boat. So she thought it would be a great joke to capsize the boat, and she was just a problem kid. Now, I find, I can be quite strict about it if I need to be, and tell her exactly what she is and she's not going to do. But it went on a little bit, and it was quite clear that she wasn't going to respond to anything I'd told her. So I said, right, okay, stop the session. Let's take the boat in. I took her off the boat. She got very upset. She went running off, had a tantrum. We went out again and we had a good session. Later on, the teachers came up to me and said, thank you for doing that, because she needed that. And I'm thinking, well, you should have told me that beforehand. But as Orit says, if somebody is potentially problematic, you have to get them out of the boat, because your responsibility is for the 19 or 20 other people. Because I'll be spending all of my time as a coach being concerned about that one person. And my greater responsibility was for the session for the majority of the people in the boat. So you have to be ethical, you have to be definite, you'd have to be positive, but you have to weigh the proportionality. So don't overreact. But if somebody's doing something, they're not listening to instructions, they're not responding, they're being very disruptive, potentially violent, well, that's not going to work in a small boat that's easily capsized. So they've got to be out, because you're doing two things. You're sending a message to the individual, but more importantly, from my point of view, you're also sending a message to the rest of the crew. And actually, I'm more concerned at that point about the rest of the crew. And once again, I'm demonstrating 100% that their safety is my priority, which is exactly what Orit just said. Even if it means you upset one person, well, I'd rather upset one person who's safely on the land than turn a boat over and have a potential disaster. Yeah, but it's a case of weighing it and acting proportionately. Like I say, somebody's just a little bit panicky, a bit concerned, and we can calm them down. Even if we put them in the safety boat, and they can drive around in the safety boat, get used to the water, and come back in the dragon boat. It depends on the circumstances. Yeah. Orit, that doesn't answer your question completely, but that give you some idea about what I'm thinking about.
I think I must talk again to with Ruvik, and I have an idea. Thank you.
Okay, but it's good to have some options before you need to use them. Yeah, if this happens, we're going to do this. If they're not too, yeah, but let's have another conversation about that, because that's a really, it's an unusual circumstance, but it's potentially serious, potentially very serious. Okay, number 6. I'm going to talk about one more, and I'm going to finish off next week because I've been talking about 120. I'll tell you what. If I talk for another 15 minutes, are you okay with that? Yeah, let's get it done. Let's get it done. We've run on a bit, but you've asked some great questions.
Tim,
yes.
Just a second. I wanted to add something about the earlier slide number 4, on nuggets number 4. Yeah, can you? Yeah, this one, the safety kits and everything. When I'm coaching in the Mediterranean, okay, where there's waves, and there are waves, we're using also on the boat. We have we call it a floating anchor, which is part of the kit of the boat. It's like a sleeve that you throw into the water and creates a lot of drag and helps you to launch, and helps you to go back also when it's a little bit wavy. So this is also something that's very important to use if you're paddling in the Mediterranean.
Okay, I see anchor sort of set up. Okay, yeah.
But it's not an anchor like a lure. It's not.
Yeah.
It's just a sleeve that holds water.
There's another. We'll talk about it when I get there. There's other ways you can use. You can create that same stability by having half the boat paddling, half the boat bracing, or whatever. But
Well, it's when you got waves from the back, it's better to have it.
Okay.
But it's true. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
אתה מדבר על עוגן צף, אסף?
עוגן צף, כן, עוגן צף.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Absolutely. Last few then. Crew cap, obviously, part of what we were talking about earlier, then we need to make an assessment about, when I say the crew capabilities, then you wouldn't be asking a novice, a beginner crew to do anything too advanced. So once again, it's matching the session you're asking people to do with their own capabilities. That's all that is. And obviously with your own crews, training regularly, you'd have a good idea about what they can do, what they can't do, and how often they are trained in various aspects of the sport. Now, forget the left-hand picture, that's just a joke, so don't worry about that. I'm just talking about night navigation. Now, I understand it. Do you normally paddle at night, or you need special permission, or you don't paddle at night?
We don't paddle at night.
Okay, fine. So I can skip over that.
When we do, I know about one time when they had a permission to do it.
Okay.
From this person who is in charge.
Okay, but the point is, my only point about this is if you got the permission to paddle at night, then you've got extra safety conditions. You've got to light the boat in the correct way, which is a white light to the front, white light to the back, green to the right, red to the left, have proper markings depending on the length of the boat, and also have more safety in terms of communications. And also, if we paddle at night, I get my paddlers, because we paddle quite a lot at night, to have a small light on their buoyancy aid.
You paddles quite a lot at the night? Why?
In the winter, yeah, of course we do, because in the winter at 5 o'clock it's dark.
Also in here, so we come to paddle
Because
earlier.
it's nice, it's nice, Mario.
Yeah, but it depends. I mean, here it's more routine if you need special permission, but there's nothing legally, unless you've got local permission, stopping you.
I think under a full moon, it's very nice in the Sea of Galilee, Mario.
Absolutely. So worth considering, but have the extra levels of safety. But the important thing is you'd be familiar, you'd have the various lights on the boat, but I also put a light on the buoyancy aid. And I have it up here. It destroys your night vision, but why do I do that?
Safety? What do you mean? Why you do this?
So why do you have, so if the boat is lit, what's the point of putting a light on the buoyancy aid?
If
they turn
the boat turn over to the water.
Absolutely. It's as simple as that. So it's a trade-off. You lose a bit of night vision, but you gain a bit of safety. So absolutely. And they're about €2 or something, as simple as that. So it's a simple thing, and it also keeps the boat well lit as well. So it complies with the law as well. Okay. Last few. Swimming skills. Okay. Once again, the bottom one's a bit of a joke. You wouldn't be going out with a great white shark, I hope, or you might do. So do you do a swimming test?
We know
we
that we are asking who knows how to swim, and yes, Rubik, they did us. Yes, we do. נכון?
Okay, well, guess what? When we do the coaching in Israel and we do the capsize prevention package, not capsize prevention is more to it, we'll include some fun sessions on how you can do the swimming test, because I guarantee in most parts of the world, if you said, okay, not in the Archon, in the Sea of Galilee next week, we're going to do a swimming test, half the crew wouldn't turn up. But if you said we're going to do a water safety fun session, then they probably will turn up out of curiosity. So we do, I'll show you how we do that, but it's all part of the swim test, and we get people to swim with a buoyancy aid and without a buoyancy aid. And I know it's part of your routine, but the countries where they don't normally wear buoyancy aids, when they do their swimming test, they suddenly realize the value of a buoyancy aid, not just in assisting them to stay buoyant, but help other people as well. So we do that, and we just cover some skills. So, you know, it's just part of the more aware you are at safety, paddling skills, how to use a paddle, the better paddler, the more safer operator you'll be. Okay. Okay, moving on. Oh, hang on, number 9. Practical first aid. Now, not everyone does this, but do you, as a matter of course, is it a legal requirement for you to have a number of people in the crew who are first aid trained? Anybody?
We have like 4 or 5 nurses, and we have a doctor. So every time, you know, we don't put them deliberately, but every time we have the person that knows how to do it.
Okay.
And
So-
I'm also as
the
a
truth,
personal coach,
team, what I think it's yeah, once a year or once to 2 years, it depends. We need to do first aid course to all of the group.
Yeah, I mean, in the UK, it's a requirement that if I'm running training sessions, I should have at least a certain level of first aid, which I've carried on. It may or may not be a requirement, but also in the UK, if you run a gathering of 50 people, there needs to be a certain level of first aid qualification. So ideally,
And it's a great idea. We got Ilana, and she could make it to everybody.
okay.
but
Let me
we
just ask
also, but Tim, we also have, if you're doing the, like, let we say in Wingate, personal training course, so you must do the first aid course. Or like if when I did the kayaking course, I must do the first aid course.
Yes, but do you have to also keep that skill? For example, I don't know how it works in Israel. In the UK, you know, throughout my police career, I had to train every 3 years. So now to keep my qualification, I have to renew that every 3 years.
Yeah, I'm doing this every 1 year. I'm renewing it every 1 year, yes.
So I won't dwell upon that, except to say, in an ideal situation, how many first aiders would you have in the boat?
1 in every boat.
1? What happens if the first aider needs first aid? Who looks after them? Well, could it happen?
Yes, of course.
What happens if your first aider is Mayo and you and you're steering the boat, and you all know in a capsize the person who's most likely to get injured is who? The helm. Because you've got all that sweep oar and all that stuff around you. And that's why when we do a briefing, we always have a number 1 and a number 2. So if I'm steering the boat and Asaf is in front of the boat, when I give people the briefing, I'll say, stay with your buddy, stay with the boat, float, acclimatise the water, listen for the next command. The next command will be numbers. If you don't hear from me, the number 2 is Asaf. And Asaf says, yeah, okay, I understand that. So you do the safety between you. In the same way that ideally, you'd have 2 first aiders in the boat, because one is there just in case the first aider is injured. It could happen. That's an ideal situation. Last point. Capsize training. Now, we've mentioned this before, and when I come to Israel, we'll be doing this live. But what we do is a capsize prevention package. It's not just turn the boat over. It starts with an effective brace stroke. Because what is the best way to deal with a capsize? It's not a trick question. What is the best way to deal with a capsize?
To prevent it.
Not to prevent it.
Correct. Don't have it in the first place. And I guarantee you this, if you have people who can do a proper risk assessment to make sure the boat only goes out when it's safe and manageable conditions, if you have a crew who can give an effective brace stroke, who can respond to commands, who can stop the boat, brace the boat and listen, you won't have a capsize. So the capsize prevention packages also includes all of these skills to prevent the capsize in the first place. Because if you've done a capsize and you've tried to swim with a dragon boat a few hundred meters, it's not an experience you'll want to repeat because it's hard work. And if you've got people who are injured with you or panicky or scared or concerned, it becomes more of a problem. So it's by far the best way to deal with it is don't have it in the first place. That doesn't mean ignore it. That means train for all the eventualities. So it's when the boat rocks, people don't panic. They immediately put in a brace stroke as your kayakers would, because it's a basic skill. But we'll spend a lot of time talking about this because it's a really fundamental thing. And at the end of it, we will do a capsize as well. But we'll teach you all the skills up to and including preventing it in the first place. That's that. Last thing. Accountability, records, and an audit trail. Now, we talked about even the record of your sessions. And when we talked to Mickey, we talked about you have a Google sheet, who turns up. But what I suggested, you also have the safety side of things about the fact you've done a safety brief, the fact you've checked the weather, the fact you've checked the boat, the fact you've warmed up, you've cooled down, just tick, 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 tick. And you end up with 10 years worth of paper saying you've done all this. And you've never had an incident. And it's always the teams that don't do this who have an incident. I used to be a detective, last point. And imagine when I was interviewing somebody who's maybe stolen something. And as they say to me, it's the first time I've ever done this. And I say to them, I bet it's not the first time you've done it. I bet it's the first time you've been caught. And the problem is, if you have a culture where you record things, you record safety, I'll almost guarantee you won't have an incident. And it's far better to have years and years and years of safety and records than one incident where somebody's been seriously injured or worse. And I'm sure you'll agree with that. The law the world over is if it's not recorded, it didn't happen. Yeah, and that's old law. So my first question is, do you need a safety officer? Yes, you do. Do you need somebody who takes specific responsibility, even if it's where the Google Sheets go? Yes, you do. And you need to keep those records and accountability, because it's records and accountability and an audit trail that you are a safe organization. And that's it. That's all I've got to talk about today. Let me just get rid of the share. It's gone. Okay, that's it. Now, I hope that was interesting. I hope that was informative. And the purpose of it is not to say, look at all these threats, look at all these dangers, look at all these problems. The thing is to say, look at these are challenges that we have. What do we need to do to make sure we comply with the law, we keep people safe, and we keep people happy? It's not about being risk averse, scared of risk. It's about recognizing sensible risks and what do we put in place to keep people safe. That's it. It really is as simple as that. It's when you shy away from it, when you're scared of the situation, it becomes a problem. That's it. That's all. So safety is really easy.
Thank you very much.
That's it. That's all right. Any quick, I've gone on a little bit, so apologies for that. Thank you for your contributions, because the value of this is not what I'm saying. The value is your understanding and sharing your knowledge. That's where the real value is here. Yeah. So any questions you've got, any points, absolutely fantastic. So thank you for that. let's just round off. Any final comments from anybody? Anybody in the house?
Yeah, I think, do you hear me, team? Yeah, we're always, we're speaking all the time around safety on the boat, on the water, but I think that every session has the safety is a little bit larger concept of just being on the water. Okay, like let's say sometimes you have to take the boats from the land to the water. So heavy lifting is also a hazard, and people can hurt their back or their knees or anything. So we have to think a little bit in a larger concept of safety, not just what happens on the water.
Have a look at, by all means, everybody's got it. Have a look at, it's called the Cyprus Safe Paddling Policy.
I've read this. I've gone through that.
You've seen how much risk assessment there is.
Yeah, heavy
And there's
lifting
too
wasn't.
much.
Yeah, heavy lifting wasn't on the list.
No, well, manual handling will be. It's in there.
Okay.
It is in there. But the point is, that took me days. But there will be more things. And the idea is you add to those, but not just collect a load of pages. But if you've got a risk, what do you do to reduce it to a sensible minimum? That's it.
Yeah.
So if you embrace it and you work with it, it's no longer a problem. It's just a challenge to be overcome to get on. Debbie, do you agree? Yeah. Orit, do you agree?
Yep.
Leora, happy? Limor, anybody else? Yale, haven't heard from Yale today.
Yeah, I agree.
Right, in that case, I'll leave you in peace. Thank you very much for your attention tonight.
Thank you very much, team. Have a
Have a
good night.
lovely
Very
evening.
much.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, team. Thank you very
Bye.
much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.